Hello, and welcome to 9394, a music podcast with Travis Roy. I hope you're doing good. I wish I had, some sort of name for you guys as listeners, like 93 or 4ers or something, like Mark Maron gets to be like, what's up with the fuckers? I'm just like, hey, hi, how are you? What are you going to do? I'm really stoked about today. Today, I am talking about the album Bone Machine from 1992 by the great Tom Waits with my dear friend Eric Branstrom. He has come on the show for the third time, so like a lot of third-timers often do, he decided to get outside of 93, 94 strictly and explore another album from the general era. As we talk about at the start of the episode, we were nervous about talking about Tom Waits and this album because they both mean so much to us. And speaking for myself, I'm going to say in advance, I think I did go a little harsh on the man in some ways. There is one point in our conversation where I basically sound like I didn't know what a photo shoot was. And I was like 20, and I did know what a photo shoot was. I understood, but I guess it was still illusions were shattered. It'll make more sense when you hear it later. I guess what I'm saying is that the conversation went some places that kind of surprised me, and maybe Eric too, at least about myself. Hopefully it's interesting to you. Here is me and Eric talking about one of our favorite albums.
Check.
Hello,
Travis Roy.
Hey.
Hello.
How you feeling?
Nervous.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe all of my notes are like making me nervous that I will miss something, which I really hate doing.
Well, so here's how I'm doing this episode on Tom Waits' Bone Machine.
Monster episode.
Yeah. I mean, I accepted before sitting down with you today, that I was going to be unhappy with it.
No, don't say that.
No, not because of you. No, not because of you, but because I know that there's no way I could possibly convey to you or anyone else what the album means to me, and I couldn't do it justice for Tom, couldn't do it justice for me. But when I started the podcast, this is one of the ones I was like, at some point I'm going to get outside of 93, 94, because this album came out in September of 92. So
yeah,
it was very much something that I was listening to the most in 93 and 94. So it's one I've always wanted to do, but since it's so important to both of us, yeah, it comes with a level of anxiety, I guess.
There's a weight here. All right, we might as well chat about that a little bit, because there's a lot of gravity here.
And a great day of wrath has come, and here's mud in your big red eye, and the poker's in the fire, and the locusts take the sky. And the earth died dreaming, while they're dreaming, while they're dreaming.
All right, cool.
Well, let's start at the beginning. I mean, we always talk about how we know each other, but we've been over this before. This is your
we're
third
friends.
visit? Yeah. Old friends and co-host on our movie podcast, Cinema 9.
That's right.
So we're used to podcasting together, but not about this important subject.
Right.
That's for sure. So how about you tell me, how did you get into this album?
Okay. Tom Waits is... he's a huge personality musically for me, just insanely huge. I didn't know his shadow was looming over me for most of my life until an acquaintance of ours kind of tapped me on the shoulder and handed me Frank's Wild Years in 97. 97 is when I was like Goldfinger and Real Big Fish. I was really into ska. So
Hmm.
this took me by surprise, and this person's like, "Hey, you're into weird shit. Check this out." And I don't know, I didn't know what to make of it at first. Like I knew it was like my music, but like I wasn't ready for it at all. So I just went to our old friend BMG Recordings.
Of course.
I already had exhausted and ruined my credit for life with Columbia House, but there's the sister company or whatever, BMG. Hey, more 1 cent albums. So I
A
bought
competitor. Yeah.
Swordfish Trombones and Rain Dogs, Black Rider, and this one. And man, yeah, I just locked myself in my room and played these nonstop. So yeah, I got to say, I really did come out as a fan in about 97. So I wasn't there in 93 as much as I would have liked, but I mean, that was an instant marriage, love at first sight.
I remember getting into this album in 93,
Mm.
and it was how I got it, maybe even late 92. It was how I got into Tom Waits. I'd never heard of him before, but I was 12 years old. So to me, he was someone that I was completely unaware of his history, the stardom that he already had. And for a long time, it was like, this is the most obscure artist. No one's ever heard of this person. This album won
Yeah,
Best Alternative Grammy for
right,
1992. So,
right.
like, yeah, people had heard of it, but, in my mind, no one had but me for a long time. That's how it felt. Even though I got into this album and into Tom Waits through MTV. The video for I Don't Want to Grow Up was on 120 Minutes,
Mm.
and it was on Beavis and Butthead as well. And yes, definitely a Columbia House pick in 1993 or late 92, whichever it was. I think I did 3 Columbia House polls and like 1 or 2 BMG polls. So cassettes were cheap in my mind. It was like, hey, free music.
Sure.
So I would just kind of like go and just check boxes of stuff that I'd heard very little about, just out of curiosity. So I got this album based on that song, I Don't Want to Grow Up. And I remember, I may have already told this story when Chad was on when we did Black Rider,
Yeah.
but I have a very distinct memory of this cassette right here,
Mm.
Life Changer, of a
Wow.
cassette, and put it in my boombox. And I don't think I even got halfway through the first song, and I took it out laughing and literally put it back in the case and threw it across my room into a pile of laundry,
Okay.
where it stayed in the corner of my room for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months or something, for a while. I was like, that was a miss. And then I moved on to the next album, so I had 12 others to look at.
Mm.
Obviously, I came back to it, and for whatever reason, the second time I put it back in, a few months later, at that point in my life, my tastes were changing very quickly.
Sure.
I was like a goblin for music. I was taking in anything I could. And by the time it was a few months ago, I don't know, or I just was more patient. At any rate, when I put it in that second time, it grabbed me by the spinal cord and like held me for the rest of my life. And this album is, if I was making a list of top 5 albums, this would almost certainly be on it, top 6. I mean, it's one of the most important albums of my life, hands down. So
Yeah.
I've never really left my listening. I've stuck with it forever.
It's just so interesting, but when we're that young and like there's no internet, so you can't just jump onto YouTube and just digest the entire discography. You've got to like send away for information about this inmate at this asylum because you want more, and just wait until it comes and then you can invest yourself in it. But yeah, man, he was just this mercurial personality that no one knew about. There's these weird rumors about sickness and impending death, and the enigma surrounding this guy for us was just, it was fun to kind of ponder and stuff, but like I do kind of miss those days where these personalities were just these people on speakers and not, people that we could, really investigate.
Yeah, I don't want to know the personal politics or like what someone had for breakfast anymore. Like I used once upon a time, I wanted to know that kind of shit. Now I don't want to know. And a big part of Tom Waits for me for much of my life was his mystique.
Sure.
I really bought into it. I didn't know that he was channeling a lot of older music and kind of repurposing it in new ways. but I was unfamiliar with all that. And I remember being like in my late 20s, I think, when I read the biography Low Side of the Road. And I remember learning there that he was born in a suburb in California and not, in fact, born in a boxcar or something like
Taxi
that.
cab.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that was always a big part of it, was his persona. And that combined with his voice and his distinct style of making music made him loom really large in my life for all of it.
Were you reading like Bukowski and Cormac McCarthy and Flannery O'Connor and all that stuff back then when you were listening to this?
Well, so again, like I got into this in 93, so I was not quite in Bukowski mode at that point. I do remember, because it had been 5 years between this and the album before this, which was Frank's Wild Years.
Yeah.
And that was like, it seemed very old to me by the time I got my hands on it. Because when this came out, it was another 4 years, I think, before Mule Variations came out.
Right.
And so that gave us a lot of time to dig backwards. And that's what I did. I dug backwards and I dug into every single album that he ever did. I was jamming Heart Attack and Vine and, all that shit, and still will.
Mhm. Yeah.
By the time I was getting into Bukowski and all that stuff, I had utterly absorbed all of his shit already.
Cool. Wow. Where do you start with this? I mean, this is a 16-track album of gems. I mean, how do we approach this?
Well, let's do it the same way I always do, which is, can you name your favorite track on this album?
Oh my God. My favorite track back then, 10 years ago, today.
Right.
Oh, Travis. Yeah, I mean, this was a tough one, dude. This was a tough one. My favorite track is still Who Are You?
Well, they're lining up to Mad Dog, your tiptoe. 3 shots for $1 with a real live dog. All the lies that you tell, I believe them so well. Take them back. Take them back to your red house for that fearful leap into the dark.
I mean,
Me too.
there's no two ways about it. But I mean, the interesting thing about that, I haven't sat down and listened to it in maybe 10 years or so. And it's been a little bit. Just going over this album and looking through the lyrics, I mean, it's kind of more of an ugly song that I remember. It's 3 minutes of him hurling insults at his ex, essentially, whether that be to make himself feel better or to cope with a breakup. But it is kind of a vitriolic song.
And co-written by his wife, Kathleen Brennan, and regular collaborator since Swordfish Trombones on.
Sure.
And I was thinking about that too. I'm like, is this them sitting down and like, are they talking about each other? Are they talking about their exes? And what I came up with is neither. There's this line in Earth Died Screaming where he says he walks between the raindrops. And I remember, Tom Waits was in the movie Down by Law with Roberto Benigni, and he did an interview at that time, which was well before this album. And he said, he's an amazing guy. He walks between the raindrops. And I was like, okay, so this isn't just being spawned out of nowhere, right? Like, this is stuff that is wrought very deliberately. And I tell that story about that to say that I don't think that Who Are You is about anyone or anything. I think it's just a bunch of Tom Waitsisms. Waitsisms. I don't know how you'd say that, but you know what I mean? I just think it's just kind of like him doing what to him is, and to Kathleen, this is one of what he calls her ballers.
Yeah.
I don't think it really means all that much, to be honest with you, but it means a lot to me. It's my favorite song on the album too.
How do your pistol and your Bible and your sleeping pills go? Are you still jumping out of windows in expensive clothes? Well, I fell in love with your sailor's mouth and your wounded eyes.
discovered it back in the day when I was on that
course.
acoustic thing with Jimmy, Johnny Hero.
Mhm.
And it's always been one that just brings me to my knees. Yeah, it's always been my favorite. But that said, I had to pick it to be my favorite song on the album too, but there's quite a few others that I had to consider because this is an album
Yeah.
full of rock solid gems.
Yeah, and it's very cohesive. I mean, to have a 16-track album that's cohesive for these types of themes, I mean, you can get the thesaurus out and just start looking up apocalypse and take your pick on an adjective because death, decay, pestilence, redemption, all this stuff. And we've got like 16 tracks that dabble in it, but not exclusively within each track. I mean, there's characters in here, and you could look at something like Who Are You and say, well, this is someone trying to blame someone else for the state of the world. And that's interesting. So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just about emotion and feeling more than individualism here.
Yeah, I think that for him, a lot of what he does is not so much storytelling as it is painting a mood and kind of just leaving his audience in that. There's themes for sure, but you're trying to find plot threads in these songs and you're not going to really find them. There's these references to specific people and specific events, but they come and go like waves and they don't end up really meaning anything ultimately from what I can gather. But being that we both picked the same song and it's one of our favorite albums, let's cheat a little bit. And
Sure.
what else was on your, what was number 2? What were you comparing Who Are You against?
I gotta say, for me, number 2 ended up being Dirt in the Ground.
What does it matter? A dream of love or a dream of lies? We're all gonna be the same place when we die. Spirit don't leave knowing your face or your name. Wind through your bones is all that remains. And we're all gonna be. I said we're all gonna be, yeah. I said we're all gonna be, yeah. I said we're all gonna be just dirt in the ground.
Yeah, Dirt in the Ground for sure. Like, it's the second track. You're coming off just like the skeleton choir of Earth Died Screaming, and you're kind of still in this weird dead world, but there's a different voice. It's not necessarily the same character, and it's a strong voice. I mean, like, you're kind of aware of the fact that Tom Waits, he's aping off. I think he's aping off his uncle's singing voice, but he's playing a character. I mean, he doesn't really sound like this, or at least he didn't used to. But it's this different kind of Greek chorus in the background commenting on the state of things. And I think it's just a really beautiful song. I mean, it's nihilistic, but it's pretty. I mean, like, these first few tracks play like, it's like every Disney villain has like their own song when they're introduced. Like, that's what a lot of these tracks remind me of, like Disney villains singing in hell. But yeah, I love this track, dude.
Yeah, it is almost comforting too. This song, it's dark and it's about death, but it's also weirdly comforting. It's kind of like, this is the path that we all take and this is what it is. And it's natural. I think I mentioned this on the Black Rider episode, but as far as his voice goes, yeah, I've heard him mention his uncle. He's been known to cover
Captain Beefheart?
No, blues musician. Oh,
Howlin'.
Howlin' Wolf. He's been known to cover Howlin' Wolf quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big influence. And he claimed at one point that he broke his voice opening up for Frank Zappa by screaming over the crowd. I think it's probably a combination of all those things. He was definitely a heavy smoker for a while too. But more than anything, it's a choice, right? It's a choice that he's making to affect this, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. For me, my second favorite song that I considered was A Little Rain.
Well, the Iceman's mule is parked outside the bar, where a man with missing fingers plays a strange guitar, and a German dwarf
speaking of songs that are ballers and songs that have like these pieces of stories, it's maybe a little obvious to be a sad song. And when it starts off and he's singing about like, you know, they're dancing on the rooftops, it always makes me think of that Patton Oswalt bit where he talks about like, it's just like filled with all these classic Tom Waits things like dwarves and, you know, all this shit. It's just so Tom Waitsy, but it's a beautiful song. You know, he does all the percussion on this album. It's a heavily percussive album, banging and booming through much of it. But for me, the strongest points in the album are the piano ballads.
Yeah, I mean, one side of me thinks that they steer a little bit away from like the devilish energy of that first chunk, but A Little Rain, I think, is the last song on the first side of the cassette, isn't it?
Yeah, and the vinyl, which I just picked up. They just remastered it for 2023. All of the Island Records stuff, so you can pick that up on vinyl and stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of cool because it's like that song kind of plays like a traditional church visit after like a night of drinking, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's appropriate. You get this beautiful church house piano, and it's cheerful. I mean, I think for me, it's almost... I think I put it as my most skippable track, to be honest with you, Travis.
Oh, it's your least favorite?
Yeah, probably because of the mood shift. I mean, it's cheerful in like an unironic way. It's just
She was 15 years old, had never seen the ocean. She climbed into a van with a vagabond. I think she said, but that's not very cheerful. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe not cheerful. Maybe just a little bit... I don't know, maybe a little sunshine is creeping in a little bit in terms of the musical orientation of it.
I got you.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, I love Mule Variations, but it kind of seems like one that should have been kind of orphaned over to that album. But still a great track.
So in preparing for this album, we talked about skipping the song as far as trying to pick a least favorite track, of not choosing Let Me Get Up On It, because Let Me Get Up On It is a less than a minute ambience kind of moment where he had recorded, I want to say like 90 songs or something on like demos, and this is one of the demos at home that made its way onto the album, which I think we made the right choice in skipping that. And then after that, I feel like the most obvious choice of least good song would be The Ocean Doesn't Want Me Today, which is more of a spoken word piece, and I like it. I didn't get the comedy to it, I think, as a kid. I was just much more hung up on like the kind of suicidal aspect of it. But there's something kind of funny about it too, which that's another thing about Tom. This is like a serious album, but he can be really fucking funny when he wants to be. And then after that, I was like, that seems like an obvious pick. So I'm like, I got to pick something that's like a true song to be my least favorite. And I struggled, and I ended up going with All Stripped Down. Banger of a song. It's fun, but if there is a song on the album that I would miss least if it was suddenly pulled from it, it would be that one.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. It's actually one that I quite enjoy.
Yeah, I like all of them. I love all of them. That's the problem. Including that one.
I think All Stripped is one of the best examples of like the subterranean feel of the album, because I mean, everyone knows this was recorded in like a storage closet or whatever the hell it was at the recording studio.
Yeah.
Cement floors and just nothing there. And yeah, you get this track All Stripped Down that's just like a party of blues goblins. And you're right, like by the time that track comes along, I'm like, wait a second, is this the same guy that did like Tom Trauberts and On the Nickel? Like, who is this weird imp? And what in the hell are these songs? But it's still a cool track, man. For me, yeah. I dig it.
No, I mean, like again, like I like every song on I love every song on the album. So it was not easy choosing it to be my least favorite. I think I end up settling on the fact that if I was trying to show someone, like if I met someone who'd never never listened to Tom Waits before, and I knew enough about their taste to be like, this person likes avant-garde, weird shit. I might show them that song specifically to be like, hey, this is the kind of thing we're dealing with. And then if I met someone that I felt like had more conventional taste in music and had never heard a Tom Waits song, and I wanted to get them into Tom Waits, that'd be like the last song I would play for them, probably.
Yeah.
But again, it is a great song. But it kind of comes right before Who Are You? So I'm kind of ready for Who Are You to come to, maybe as part of it. I don't know. I'm searching for a reason to make it my least favorite. But
yeah. With all albums that you love, you kind of can be in a rush to get to your favorite track. I'll skip The Ocean too. I mean, it's fun. It's like deep sea babble, but it's about botched suicide, and that's never the place I want to be when I listen to this album. I'm looking for a little bit of hope among the macabre.
Which is in there. It is in
Sure.
there. We have, say, the straight up comedy of Going Out West. I mean, that song is hilarious. He comes from LA. His whole life, you know that he's banging up against these fucking dudes that have rolled into town and have these big dreams about how they're going to make it there because, you know, Tony Graziosi used to date their mom. That kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of comedy and lightness on the album. You just kind of have to look for it a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, that's got to be the hit. It's on Fight Club soundtrack. It gets the video. I think he does it on Arsenio.
I was able to do it karaoke once, so that suggests something there, that it was like they made it into a karaoke version. But to me, the big hit from the album was always I Don't Want to Grow Up, because it was the first single. It was like a regular video on MTV. The Ramones covered it, but those are pretty much it. If you've heard a song from this album and you haven't heard the album, it was probably one of those two songs. Or Earth Died Screaming and Dirt in the Ground have shown up in a few movie soundtracks.
Sure. How about underrated tracks?
All right. My underrated track is partly because it's such a long album. You know, it takes me about 45 minutes to get ready, and I don't know that I always have finished the album in my life. But for sure, as much as I've always loved every song on this album, there's one song that I kind of glossed over until like the last 10 years or so, in which it became one of my favorites, and that's That Feel. Song is lyrically, emotionally, talk about uplifting, you know. It is a great way to end an album like this, and Keith Richards' voice works so well with Tom Waits. I really wish they'd collaborated more, to be honest. It's a really beautiful song.
Yeah, I love Blind Love is one of my top 5 favorite songs, and Keith Richards does the guitar on that. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Dude, it's incredible. I mean, talk about drunk working class gremlins at last call at the bar. This is like such a perfect way to end the album, because there's so much misery in this album that to have this like enlightened, optimistic hangover chant. Yeah, it's refreshing, man. And it's a powerful and beautiful song. I think it's incredible.
Lofty. Yeah.
I kind of did the same thing as you, man. Like, I love Black Wings. I think I didn't listen to that enough growing up. But man, when I put this album on a couple of days ago and I listened to Whistle Down the Wind, I was in tears.
Yeah.
of my life. I dreamed someday I'd go where the blue-eyed girls and the red guitars and the naked rivers flow. Now I'm not all I thought I'd be. I've always stayed around. I'm been as far as mercy and grand, frozen to the ground.
Part of me kind of is, I hate to say this, man, I don't even know if I should, but part of me doesn't really need Tom Waits anymore, so I didn't think I'd be as affected by this sort of music. But I mean, this is a reminder of just the power and the genius of this man as a songwriter. You talk about Tom Travers Blues and on the nickel, and this is probably one of his third most beautiful songs for me. It's just so gorgeous. These lyrics, I'm frozen to the ground, and it's all about mournful regret and being at the end of things. And that's not something I thought about as a youth. I thought about, I don't want to grow up, but I've kind of did my thing here. I mean, I'm 43, but I'm going to raise this family. I'm going to carry on with this career, and that's going to be it. So a song like this that talks about whether or not I did everything I could, and if I'm going to be able to step into the shadow without regret, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. Broken down windmill where there ain't no wind at all. That line for me just speaks volumes about, what once was. Yeah, it's kind of a bleak song.
It is.
But it's beautiful. That's one of the things about him and why he struck me so hard at that age, and why I don't need him as much anymore either, because a lot of what he does is find beauty in darkness. And for me, that was a big part of my teenage years and 20 years was like, that was how I confronted the darkness, was to find that beauty in it. But as I've gotten older, I still love Tom Waits deeply, deeply, and this album. But you're right, my relationship with him has changed. I don't go to these albums with the regularity that I used to. I mean, I still listen to him often.
Yeah.
But when I listen to him, I typically listen to stuff from before Kathleen Brennan, to be honest. I listen to the earlier stuff, which surprises me, but that's what I do. And this song, Whistle Down the Wind, is a good example of how beautiful his fascination with the darkness can be, and also why you can't necessarily spend decades living in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's not tongue-in-cheek. I mean, so many of these records are very playful and impish, and it's this track with this kind of bluegrass pulse that just really struck me, man. But I'm with you. If I throw in Tom Waits, it's usually part of Saturday night or anything off the Asylum days. Yeah, I think you hit the point. I mean, it's not an elixir for me anymore. It's not this companion. And it's definitely not this secret that only I thought I knew about along with a few friends of mine. I mean, Tom Waits is this badge of honor growing up as an adolescent, as a musician. And I'm not going to say that the magic wears out, but Tom Waits being kind of this romantic passenger in one's quest, it just kind of fades. And that's a result of maturity. And that's a result of finding actual pain in your life, as opposed to just longing or a sense of what could happen.
Well put. I think of this, I cut it out of Rolling Stone, I think it was. I guess it was like a, magazine-sized picture that I had on my wall when I lived in Florida for a few years. And it was a photo shoot of Tom Waits standing on a train track with a stick and like a rusted tin can over it. He's dressed like Tom Waits, like always is. And he's like kind of screaming into the tin can on the stick like it's a microphone. And it's a cool fucking picture. But eventually, that was staged. He wandered around and picked up, it's not like that's what he does with his life, is walk around train tracks. And I think that it took me a while to accept the artifice that is behind what he does to a degree. This is a persona that he puts on. Like, he doesn't really share his personal life that much, which he's entitled to do. But I get the feeling like if you interacted with him, he'd be a lot more normal than you would think. And as a kid, I think I did the same thing. He was like this totem or like this talisman, like this character that I carried with me in my heart as I'm odd, he's odd, the world is odd, we can all be odd in our own right way. And I still feel that way sometimes, but I don't need it the same way. To go back to Black Wings real quick though, since you brought that up, I do want to say that my favorite moment on this album is that guitar moment that comes in. Weirdly enough, not even him. It's like it's like that big fucking descending thing where there's some sort of, they tweak something in the post, but it just sounds so fucking cool. And again, borrowed from so much shit that came before it, spaghetti western type stuff. Repurposed in a way that is distinctively his.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have the headphones on that just to appreciate that Morricone outlaw twang that comes with it, and a heavy, in my opinion, Leonard Cohen pulse throughout. Not a lot of songs from Tom Waits remind me of other artists because he's so unique, but this kind of screams Leonard Cohen for me, Nick Cave for me, in a good way. But it's just a really cool jam.
Cohen, another one whose voice took dramatic turns throughout the course of his career. Started off lighter and lilting, and then by the time he was done, it was, below ground and rock and gravel. And no one ever asks about his voice. No, it's all just he aged.
Yeah, he did the same thing at the end of his life. He was the, phantom in the black and white figures, an enigma to the end. And I think him and someone like Tom Waits, I think the real person is the guy in the coffee shop just singing about, sex workers and hobos. I mean, I think there's legitimacy in that character, and a lot of our later stuff is put on by public opinion. I mean, he's a weirdo, there's no doubt about it, but I think it was a good idea to kind of keep his private life, not Sanskrit, but a little bit closer to his heart. It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's played fame pretty well and kept it all kind of suppressed, where he could live a normal life more or less, but still do all kinds of amazing things and create incredible work. Another point I wanted to make about another song was that this album came out when I was still in speech therapy for my lisp.
Oh.
And to hear, as a kid, to hear Jesus Gonna Be Here. I felt good about it, but also weird about it, because it's like he just chooses to have a lisp for one song, which I always thought was cool in a way, because it's like the kind of characters that he would affect for a specific song.
Yeah,
I guess that kind of played in a little bit for me too at that age, to be like, someone could have a lisp and sing and be cool, which I needed that at that age.
I'm a little surprised that In the Coliseum didn't come up a little bit more. I think it's one of the few points in an entire discography where he's kind of directly commenting on the atrocities of a government without putting too much euphemism in it. I mean, he's calling out bald head senators for spilling blood directly.
Yeah, he gets into stuff later with Hell Broke Loose and Day After Tomorrow. He got more political, I think, later on during the Bush years. In the Coliseum is also maybe the bawdiest song on the album, like the most grotesque and carnivalesque in a way, it's intentionally so.
Sure.
It's big. It's really big. And it's fun. It's a fun song. It's a great way to start the second side of this album, that's for sure.
There's no way to do this thing justice without just talking extensively on each track. But, overall, I was struck with it for 3 straight minutes on the latest listening. It hasn't softened for me, like I said, I don't really need it anymore, but like it's a touchstone album for me easily.
That's exactly how I would phrase it. I mean, I need it in that it's one of my most important albums, but I don't feel the same way about Tom Waits that I used to, which again, I love him. He's not like someone that for a long time he almost felt like an imaginary friend or something.
Absolutely.
Like, it was just kind of always there. Yeah.
Yep, an uncle you wish would knock on your door. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's because Bad As Me comes out in 2011. I got that as a gift. I threw it on. I'm like, okay,
It's good.
I listened
I
to
like
it maybe a couple of times. That's 13 years. I mean, so has he run out of things to say? Is he enjoying his age? He's 74 years old. He's got a big family. He does a lot of charity work for the farm community. I guess I'm just trying to nail down why we haven't heard from him in a little while. I mean, he's taken his sabbaticals, but maybe the absence of that voice has made our appetite for him dwindle a little.
I do believe that he hates touring. I think that's part of
Hmm.
it. And also, I think that maybe 74 is up there. He basically retired in his early 60s,
Yeah.
and I think that he's entitled to that. And I feel the same way. I mean, that album, Bad As Me, I like it, but you're right. I don't listen to it very often. And wasn't Orphans, Brawlers, and Ballers after that?
2006. Yeah,
That was
that was about
2006?
5 years before it. And he
Okay.
drops 50 tracks and almost as if to say, okay, there you go. There's the rest of it. I'm out.
That's what I was about to say. And I love that
Oh,
triple
dude,
album.
I
And
love
there's
it. I
some of the
love
best
it.
stuff that he ever did is on
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
And at this point, if he came back with another album, I'd almost be like, well, why? Go take a nap. You're old. It's fine.
Yeah.
You've done your part. You're okay. Like, rest.
Sure.
Rest easy. He's earned it.
He's earned it.
What's your favorite Tom Waits album?
Jesus, Travis. Wow. Yeah, Rain Dogs. Rain Dogs is the easy answer. I mean, I love every single track on there so much.
This is my favorite. Yeah, this is my favorite. Rain Dogs has always been a favorite. But honestly, yeah, what I put on most often is Closing Time.
Yo, oh man, amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
David Geffen, I think, of all people. I mean, just God, this guy. I think signed him eventually for Closing Time. Not a success, but we got to thank him for it.
Yeah.
Favorite Tom Waits film performance or character?
Ooh, I gotta go with Dracula.
Master, I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah,
Yep.
him as Renfield. He's the best Renfield ever.
Yeah, I think you're right. When I got that collection from BMG, I'm like, wait, crazy dude from Dracula? This is him? Bizarre.
You didn't know that? That's so funny because, like, to me, I just got into him right when I saw Dracula.
Oh shit.
So I was like, what? What the fuck?
Okay.
He acts too? This guy's in everything. And I'd already been watching Fisher King for quite a few years before that. That was the experience I had with that. I'm like, this guy is the fucking veteran guy that starts screaming, "Rad, go no further." That's amazing. Anything else you want to say about this album before we move on?
Like I said, I think it's a young person. I mean, it's anybody's album, but it was a big young person's album for me. And now that I'm the old man on the porch, looking back, I can listen to a song like I Don't Want to Grow Up, realize that all the things he didn't want to do, I've since done. And it's been a long, hard road. And I went through an actual depression, and it's not fun, and it's not really romantic, but in a way, like it's like Ron Livingston says in Swingers, I do kind of miss that pain. I miss being like on a bridge that I see on the side of the road and smoking a cigarette, looking at the moon and being all fucking romantic and sad. I miss it.
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly why I would return to a lot of albums like this, is because they're melancholy. And I think there's a sense of satisfaction in melancholy.
I think you're right.
But yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous work from a genius songwriter.
What else could you say? I mean, it's one of the best albums by one of the best songwriters, songwriting teams, I should say.
Sure.
She did about half the songs in this album, then he did
Yeah.
the rest.
Right.
Other than the one he did with Richards. But yeah, it's really one of the best albums I think ever.
There you go.
Yeah. And I also think you make a strong point about the lure of romanticizing grief and pain and depression and all that kind of stuff, which you struggled with in your teens and 20s. I struggled with in my teens and 20s. And this was one of those albums that got me through it and maybe helped entrench me in it too.
Good.
All right. So we have entered the year 1992
Of course.
with this album. So you and I have another podcast, a film podcast. I thought
We
we'd
do.
give the people a little taste of you and me talking about movies,
Okay.
1992 movies. I'm looking at the list of winners and nominees from the 65th Academy Awards, which aired in 1993. This was the year that Jack Palance very famously did push-ups and then said that Marissa Tomei was a winner, and everyone thought that he lied, but he didn't.
Yep.
Something.
Marissa Tomei, yeah.
So I thought we'd kind of talk this over real quick and see if we, now that we're over 30 years from this, from these films, do we agree? So let's start with Best Picture.
Yes.
Best Picture winner of that year was Unforgiven,
Yeah, one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life.
which I figured you were going to still feel that way because I know that about you. It's one of your favorite movies. Other nominees that year were The Crying Game,
Yep.
A Few Good Men, Howard's End, and Scent of a Woman. So you still feel like Unforgiven should have won?
It's the greatest Western ever made. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, period. End of story.
I'm really glad that Scent of a Woman and The Crying Game were both nominated. I don't know that Scent of a Woman gives Unforgiven a run for its money. I feel like The Crying Game does give it a run for its money. But
Okay.
yeah, if I had to pick out of these, I'd still go with Unforgiven. I don't think A Few Good Men is a very good movie.
No, it's fun, but it's cheesy trash.
Yeah, looking back now, I'm actually kind of surprised it was a Best Picture nominee.
Right.
The director who won this year, that was also Clint. Pretty much the same exact setup here, except for the player was also nominated for Robert Altman, which
Sure.
we did that on Cinema 9, and there is some really incredible technical achievements there, but more of a cinematography thing, I think, than necessarily Altman's ideas for it. But it wasn't nominated for Best Cinematography, so go figure. Okay, all right, moving on. Let's go to supporting actor, supporting actress.
Okay.
All right, so actor in a supporting role. So part of the reason why I decided to do the Academy Awards is I was going to talk about movies that were available in theaters when this came out. That included Unforgiven. I'm just like, well, he'll just pick Unforgiven for everything. So,
Of course, Gene Hackman.
so Gene Hackman won, and he was up against Jay Davidson for The Crying Game, Jack Nicholson for A Few Good Men, Al Pacino for Glengarry Glen Ross,
Yes, that's right.
and David Paymer for Mr. Saturday Night.
You don't say. Little David Paymer.
Academy Award nominee David Paymer, which I don't remember that at all.
Why? Not at all. I don't remember that being a particularly good film, but God bless him. Love David Paymer.
Yeah, he's good. I'm glad he got it. But yeah, I'd still give it to Gene Hackman. Al Pacino obviously is awesome in Glengarry Glen Ross, but I don't know that's the one to give him an Academy Award for him.
Oh, man. You've already covered supporting actor and director and picture. I mean, this is 92. I mean, Reservoir Dogs, I could make a case for Quentin Tarantino. I could make a case for Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Malcolm, all of these across the board.
Yeah, but that was not a movie that the Oscars were going to take seriously at that point.
No.
I mean, they've taken very few of his movies seriously still. Obviously, it's changed the last couple. For Best Supporting Actress, Emma Thompson won for Howard's End, which I actually never saw.
Yeah.
Have you?
I like all of those Merchant Ivory films. Remains of the Day is a gorgeous film, but I also like this one. Yeah, it's a good one.
I should watch it. Catherine Deneuve was nominated for Indochine.
Sure.
Mary McDonnell for Passion Fish. Michelle Pfeiffer for Love Field. Do you have any recollection of Love Field?
Yeah, I think it is one of those JFK assassination movies.
Oh, it rings no bells. And then Susan Sarandon for Lorenzo's Oil, which I do remember. Okay.
I don't think I've seen any of those movies.
I haven't either. Shit, I've not seen one of those movies. I think I saw Lorenzo's Oil back in the day, so I guess we have no comment on that one. Moving on. Actress in a lead role. Oh, that's what I just did. Oh, that
okay,
was
wow.
I fucked up. That was in a leading role. In a supporting role, Marissa Tomei, of course, won for My Cousin Vinny. Judy Davis was nominated for Husbands and Wives. Joan Plowright for Enchanted April. Vanessa Redgrave for Howard's End. And Miranda Richardson for Damage, not
Crying Game.
Not Crying Game. That's
wow. I've never seen any of those movies, but
what's going on here? I've seen My Cousin Vinny.
Marissa Tomei.
All right, moving on. We have no comment about that either, unfortunately. I don't know. It just seems awfully. I haven't heard of any of these movies since.
Is this the BFI Awards? It used to sound very mawkish.
And then lastly, actors in a leading role. The winner was Hooah! Al Pacino for Son of a Woman. Robert Downey Jr. was nominated for Chaplin.
Oh, God, yeah.
He recently
It's
said
amazing.
in an interview that he was glad that he didn't win because it would have spun him out into an even worse trajectory. He thinks he would have been even more unbearable and drug-laden had he won. Clint Eastwood was nominated for Unforgiven. Stephen Ray, Kelly Your Own Kind for The Crying Game.
Ray.
And Denzel Washington for Malcolm X.
Oh, I remember that year. Yeah, it was definitely between Denzel and Al Pacino. Yeah, I love Son of a Woman. That is a big, silly performance, but there's a lot of hour in what he's doing internally in that film.
It's weird that since he's playing a blind character, he's just kind of staring off so much that he actually emotes more. I think he uses his expressions more in that film. He goes big with the bombast like he always does, and maybe that might be the most bombastic film role he ever did.
I watch it every year, and I just took another look at it during Thanksgiving. And what he's doing in the film is he's funny in it, and it's a big performance. But what he's actually doing, the character of Colonel Slade, is he's masking deep internal pain the entire time in an interesting way through comedy.
Yeah. Well, dramedy, I would argue, but yeah. Yeah, although Eastwood and Unforgiven, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, man. Forget about it.
Kind of amazing that he didn't win.
Hell of a thing killing a man. Take away everything he's got, everything he's gonna have.
Tough year. I mean, for Pacino, Eastwood, and Washington, these are three of the defining performances of their careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just some of the best work that three of the best actors that we have ever did. So
yeah,
tough year. I'm glad I wasn't one of the people making the choice on that.
And Chaplin, I mean, RDJ, this, brat pack, cute, pretty boy, Hollywood's punk brat, turning in a beautiful performance of an Englishman in a, David Copperfield-esque story from cradle to grave. It's a big, beautiful performance.
And Stephen Ray, I mean, I love what he does.
Kill your own kind.
I love what he does in The Crying Game. I mean, he's so understated in that movie. It's a great movie.
Is 92 Shortcuts? I mean, you want to talk Bob Altman and Tom Waits. That's one of his best performances. I don't like Shortcuts, but I think he's really good in it.
I know I had the soundtrack for that one because I thought that Tom Waits was going to be on it, and he wasn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, between that, Ironweed, I think he's just brilliant in.
That was 93, actually.
Wow, okay. Shit.
All right, man. Well, how do you feel like we did? Did we do Tom justice as best we could?
Yeah, I'm proud of it. I'll walk away from this pod happy about it. And I think it's going to inspire me to take another look at some of the stuff that I've been missing these past few years.
Yeah, because like I said, before I even planned doing this episode with you, I got this on vinyl, so I've been listening to it a lot anyways lately. And I definitely need to start getting into more of his more recent stuff again. It's been too long since I've spent time with it. So I will.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you again for doing this. Appreciate it.
Let's do it again. It's always a pleasure. I love this show.
You're very welcome on at any time. You know that.
All right. Godspeed, my friend. Bye.
Was a murder in the red barn, murder in the red barn. Was a murder in the red barn, a murder in the red barn.
I'm lucky enough to talk to Eric almost every single week about something that we feel passionate about, usually film, and it is a fucking treat. I really recommend it. Talking to him specifically, or anyone in your life, about things that you love and are passionate about. It's the best. I love it. Listener, if you wanted to be on the show, that is a possibility if you are into it. You don't have to do much. I have very low standards. There's no vetting process here. You, as a complete stranger anywhere in the world, if you speak English, you can reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to talk about such and such album released in 93 or 94 that you haven't already covered on your show. You could pick anything. What baffles me is that no one at this point has picked the album Wildflowers from 1994 by Tom Petty.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, find you a lover. Go away, somewhere all bright and new. I have seen no other who compares with you.
It's funny doing this podcast because I had certain people in mind to do certain episodes that in some cases it's just, for whatever reason, it's just not happening. Some people just don't want to do it. And that's fine. They're very much allowed to not want to do it. That's their prerogative, as Bobby would say. I had held on to hope that this friend of mine, who I felt would be perfect to do this album, and I was like, okay, I'll just say that it's reserved if anyone asks for it. But no one asked for it. It's been a year. So with that, I have to say, shame on you, listeners, fans of music that is good. I say that lightly, of course, but man, come on. This is the masterpiece from a master craftsman of music, if there ever was one, in my opinion. I'd love to dig into this near perfect album with somebody who feels passionately about it. But again, it can be any album that you're into. Just give me a shout at 9394podcast@gmail.com. And you're perfectly welcome to email me just to say hi too. That's always welcome. Let's see. Do I have anything else to say to you all today? No, I thought hard about it. I don't. That's going to be it. Thank you. Thank you to Eric. Thank you to you. Thank you to Tom. '93.94, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.